The following text is from Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula. The narrator is being driven in a carriage through a remote region at night. The baying of the wolves sounded nearer and nearer, as though they were closing round on us from every side. I grew dreadfully afraid, and the horses shared my fear. The driver, however, was not in the least disturbed. He kept turning his head to left and right, but I could not see anything through the darkness. As used in the text, what does the word disturbed most nearly mean? A. Disorganized, B. Alarmed, C. Offended, or D. Interrupted.
So in question number 4, we are talking about a text from Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula. And in this situation, the narrator is being driven in a carriage through a remote region at night. So what is the sound they are hearing? The baying of wolves sounded nearer and nearer. So if there's a lot of wolves coming, that sound is coming nearer and nearer. And the narrator who is inside the carriage is growing dreadfully afraid. And even the horses shared my fear, he says. That means both the narrator and the horses are afraid right now. But the driver who is driving this carriage, he's not afraid. He's not being disturbed. He kept turning his head to left and right. And even though the driver was looking left and right, the narrator could not see anything through the darkness. So that was the situation. Now, what could the word disturbed mean? We cannot choose A. In some context, disturbed can mean disorganized. But in this case, it is not talking about the character acting in a disorganized manner. It's just that the driver is behaving differently compared to the horse's fear and the narrator's fear. And alarmed, that is the correct answer. Choice B is the best answer because, as used in the text, disturbed most nearly means alarmed. The text portrays the narrator traveling in a carriage as wolves howl in the surrounding darkness. The text contrasts the reaction of both the narrator and the horses pulling the carriage with that of the driver of the carriage. The narrator and horses are dreadfully afraid, but the driver is not in the least disturbed. In other words, the driver is not alarmed by the wolves nearby. Again, in fact, C also, in some context, disturbed can mean offended because you are disturbed or you can get offended by something if somebody says something or does something which you don't like. So the text, however, in this case doesn't portray one character feeling offended or upset by another's actions in this case. But here it is the contrast, the fear the narrator feels with another character's lack of fear. So we cannot choose C. And D also, interrupted. Here also in some context disturbed can mean interrupted. But in this case the text doesn't portray an action being interrupted. No action is getting interrupted here. It's just the travel depicted in the scene continues despite the threat of the wolves outside the carriage. So that's why B, alarmed, is the best meaning we can choose from this.
Choice A is incorrect. Although in some contexts, disturbed can mean disorganized, the text doesn't portray a character acting in a disorganized manner. Instead, the driver continues to drive the carriage, even though the horses pulling it are alarmed. Choice C is incorrect. Although in some contexts, disturbed can mean offended, the text doesn't portray one character feeling offended or upset by another's actions. Instead, it contrasts the fear felt by the narrator with another character's lack of fear. Choice D is incorrect. Although in some contexts, disturbed can mean interrupted, the text doesn't portray an action being interrupted. Indeed, the travel depicted in the scene continues despite the threat of the wolves outside the carriage.